going to show you what happens when you don't pay. Ow. Welcome to the Winter Sauce Podcast. It is Sunday, June 22nd, 2025. I'm Winter Sauce, Cosmic Weapon of Thule, and this is the first segment of Winter Sauce Podcast. As you can clearly see, here's how I can be contacted, all of this, and the main way that we go and promote our releases. And we're going to start with Iran. Okay? As you can clearly see by the reincarnation of John McCain's erection, John Bolton being hospitalized of reading about Israel bombing Iran, and then this of Trump just laying the hammer down in mimetic form. The neocons have Trump has completely capitulated. The neocons have totally capitulated. The globalist won. It is the worst nightmare. We are in full-blown war. Okay, no. Alright, now, Iran. This is pretty complex. And we're gonna break it down. But before I do that, I obviously want to talk about Israel for a bit. Israel is it's just a country, guys. Okay, and everyone's like, well, how does that make any sense? Okay, and why do we have to start with Israel? Now, we have to, because they're, okay, now, Israel, for all the lobbying and everything else and all the stuff their intelligence operations and everything else have done in all of this throughout history, you know, I've done videos on it, I've released albums on it, I've talked ad nauseum about Israel. And then they go and finally do something rather than just collecting intelligence on drone mall kiosks or something. Okay, it's just a country. And before we can get into Iran, because Israel is there, we have to just briefly unpack the uber rights fascination with Israel. Because it seems anywhere on the right of the political spectrum, everybody just has a raging hard-on for Israel. It's either, I stand with Israel, this little nation that rose up out of the dirt and fights everyone in the Middle East guided by God. And it kicked your ass, and America and Israel, Zion, Jesus, God, yes! Okay, there's that. Okay, there's that. And then there is the nation of Israel is the source of all of my problems and all of the other stuff that people can't function about, rather than just because somebody decided not to do the Madagascar plan and ultimately just resettled all of the Jews in the Middle East in an area where they were not wanted and had perpetual conflict with Palestine. Okay. Israel, it's just a country, guys. And Qatar and some of these other Middle Eastern countries are finally just realizing that the easiest way to just, combat the Israel lobby is to do the one thing that everybody bitching about all of that for years has never done, and that is just simply buy more media than them. So usually the people bitching about Israel, by the way, are people with no money to go and do something about it. I mean, yeah, you got the leftists, but that's just because they want, to have Sharia law exist exist aside all the trans people and their failed vision. Okay, and all of that. Okay, and they're actually kind of right with the Palestine conflict is. Maybe Israel's not wanted there, and that's all rooted in Abrahamic stuff. But that's aside. For all the lobbying and influence that they've done over our politicians and everything else, the fact that they're basically saying, well, we're going to just step up and go do this war for you guys, that takes some sack. And if you want to understand, there's a certain sect on the right that just hates Israel. And that's mostly from an autistic fascination. I mean, I've been there. I wish I still had some of those box fans from that album I made like almost 8 years ago, by the way, because it's really warm here. And the fan I got back here ain't cutting it. And the air is really stale. Okay. Anyway. Alright. Now, if you go watch the entire Ted Cruz, Tucker Carlson interview, that'll pretty much put a nutshell on Israel. Okay, now, one, and I did watch the entire thing, and it's important that you do. I don't necessarily agree with all of Ted Cruz's overtly Zionist positions. I do not care that the Bible dictates that we should stand with Israel. That this is, and I'll explain why that in a bit, but Tucker Carlson basically just being full boat right-wing autist over all of this, and then just having a giant slap fight with him as somebody that I know would call those things. You know, we've all been there. We've all seen those internet arguments on various forums and boards and stuff. And that's exactly what that was. Okay? Ted Cruz, while he may or may not have lost the argument, was substantially more prepared and came away from that looking substantially more informed and reasoned compared to, oh, well, Israel is bad and we have all these facts. Okay? It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. That's what that was. And then them actually continuing to do the combat. And now, my position on this war is twofold. One, yeah, we probably shouldn't be there. Two, if you're gonna do it, then yeah, fucking do it. Don't fucking pussy around this thing. Just fucking blow the shit up and let's go the fuck home. Alright? And three, and this is what most of the podcast is going to be explaining. Iran is the problem. Okay? And I'm going to get to that in a bit. And now, I obviously, nobody wants regime change. Nobody wants to spread democracy with a long-term, occupation. I mean, we've seen how all of these places end up, where they're just basically, they do not have a functioning government. Like Kuwait, nobody cares about that. Iraq, nobody cares about that. Syria, nobody cares about that. Libya, nobody cares about that. And you go look at all those countries, and it's just a mess. It is just a governmental mess of poverty, people just fighting each other. Okay. Nobody wants that, but in this instance, Iran is the problem. Okay? Now, and to understand that, we need to understand Islamic countries, okay? There is 3 types of Islamic countries. The first is Afghanistan, and they get the graveyard of empires. You can, and the reason they get their own category is because you will never conquer Afghanistan. Russians tried and failed. We tried and failed. The minute we left, they just came and put all their shit back. Withdrawal being a disaster, and then they just stole all the stuff and all the military equipment and just paraded it around, and that was a disaster. But that's what happens with Afghanistan. Okay? The next country that's going to try that, and maybe in my lifetime, maybe not, is China. And they're going to go in there, they're going to spend all this money, they're going to buy all this stuff, put all the AI and shit everywhere, and factories, and manufacturing, and turn the country into one giant work camp. or something equivalent to that, one massive factory. And then what's going to happen is they're going to leave there. And then they're just going to come back out from the caves and put everything right back to the Stone Age. Like the current head of state of Afghanistan, this is something Akhundzada. Zero digital footprint at all. Nobody knows if he's even alive, and that's the head of your country. That is Afghanistan. That is the Stone Age. Okay. And then after the human race is almost extinct, and I say almost, and the aliens come and take over the planet, okay, you're going to have the alien civilization everywhere but one little cutout for Afghanistan. Because it will be the Stone Age. And the last humans that will survive on Earth will be the Afghanis. That place is unconquerable. Okay, so that's the first type of Islamic country. The second type would be Islamic countries that do not know how to wipe their own ass. Okay? And I'm not talking about squat toilets and Islamic culture. That's not what I mean. This is just a metaphor. These are places like Oman and Yemen and Syria. Now, various Islamic African countries. These are places where the countries are extremely in extreme poverty, extremely in failed states, all of that. I mean, if you want to see an example of how, that those countries, function, go look at Somalia, civil war longer than I've been alive. Shows no signs of stopping, is a complete governmental failed state. So much so that the UN, globalists, everyone else is like, you know what, fuck this, just leave them alone. Just let them die. Okay? So that's group 2, and anybody in group 2, if any of these countries were to do anything, it would nobody would care. It would be like, really? Well, don't hurt nothing. And these pose no real general threat to anybody. Then you have group 3. Would be more developed Islamic countries that can exist on the global stage. Okay? Iran would fall into this group. And this is places like Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, all of these other Islamic places where they basically would be considered adults. Alright? And that they can function, they can go to their jobs, they can produce, they don't, it's not a problem so much. Okay? They're not a failed state, a complete third world parody of themselves. Okay? They can exist. Alright? And Iran would obviously fall into group 3, and that is also probably only one of 2 places where American military intervention is going to be required to change anything. There's one of 2 places. The first place is Haiti. I did an entire video on that on one of the other podcasts where they do not have a government, and the only thing that's going to ever end anything there is if America or the UN or somebody basically puts boots on the ground, a lot of boots on the ground, and does full-blown nation building where they just get all the criminals out and suspend law and order there and just do what needs to be done. That's Haiti. Okay, and go clean it all out, and hopefully they can install people that could keep it clean. Okay. And then the other one is Iran. However, Haiti, like I said, needs the democracy. Nation building, etc. Iran just needs regime change. Okay, and the only people now, and I'll let people have their own opinions on this, but then you get people that are like, "Oh, Trump is doing war with Iran, and I wish I never would have voted for him. We were all lied to. Bah, you're all sheep." Okay, one, Trump's still better than the alternative, but you wanted to see the alternative get into power so you can continue to just bitch about how you hate politicians forever. Okay, that does not. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Everybody, if you still believe that politicians are honest with their constituents and don't mislead everybody, you really need to go outside and learn about the real world. Okay? If you have any faith in politicians doing half of the crap that they say they're going to do. Okay? I mean, yeah. That's just something, you got to set low expectations for politicians. Okay? Alright. So there's that. And those people, if they want to get off a Trump train, that's fine. Okay, we can just, I'll just, that's fine. You can just not have, you can go pay more taxes. You can go have America be last. You can go and not contribute, and that's fine. I'll take all of the stock and all the extra tax breaks and everything that are going to you. You can just go and bitch in a corner with everyone else. That's fine. Anyway, now to understand Iran. Let's explain how we got here, and this might explain why there may be some truth to the neocon position. Okay, now to understand how we got here, we have to go all the way back to who ran Iran before the Ayatollah, the Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran, ruling from 1941 to 1979, and he was and I kid you not, this was his title. The Arya Mayor, Light of the Aryans. Arya Mayor in his title of Arya Mayor, in the Light of the Aryans. That was his title in Persian language. Okay, so this guy was fine. Alright. Now, he was installed originally after the White Revolution. In 1963, Mohammad Reza Shah introduced the White Revolution, a series of reforms aimed at transforming Iran into a global power and modernizing the nation by nationalizing key industries, and he ascended to power in 1953 Iranian coup d'etat, Operation Ajax, and he was set up and put into power and installed by the CIA and MI6. And this might explain a few things about them now. Now, he introduced the series into global power and modernizing the nation by nationalizing key industries and redistributing land. The regime also entered Iranian nationalist policies, establishing numerous popular symbols in Iran relating to Cyrus the Great. The Shah initiated major investments in infrastructure, subsidies, and land grants for peasant populations, profit sharing for industrial workers, construction of nuclear facilities, nationalization of Iran's natural resources, and literacy programs, which are considered some of the most effective in the world. The Shah also instituted economic policy tariffs and preferential loans to Iranian businesses, which sought to create an independent Iranian economy. Manufacturing of cars and appliances and other goods in Iran increased substantially, creating a new industrialist class insulated from threats of foreign competition. Remind you of somebody. The Light of the Aryans went and made Iran great again. By the 1970s, the Shah was seen as a master statesman and used his growing power to pass the 1973 Sale and Purchase Agreement, related to oil and stuff. The reforms culminated in decades of sustained economic growth that would make Iran one of the fastest growing economies among both the developed world and developing world. During his 37-year-long rule, Iran spent billions of dollars worth in industry, education, health, and military spending. The Iranian national income rose 423 times over, and the country saw an unprecedented rise in per capita income, which reached the highest level of any point in Iran's history, and high levels of urbanization. By 1977, the Shah's focus on defense spending to end foreign powers' intervention in the country had culminated in the Iranian military standing as the world's 5th strongest armed force. Okay. So everything was going great. He was installed by the deep state, and he started their nuclear program. Okay? Then there was the Cinema Rex fire, which the Cinema Rex, I don't believe that this was a movie house, or maybe it was. Yeah, it was a movie house where people were watching an Iranian drama film called The Deer, which is one of the most acclaimed Persian movies of all time. Okay, it was set ablaze, killing between 370 and 400 people, and the event was started by 4 individuals who militants were motivated by Islamic extremism, dousing the building with airplane fuel before setting it alight. This triggered the Iranian Revolution of 1979, which helped overthrow the dynasty. The governing dynasty initially blamed radical Marxists for the fire, and everybody blamed the secret police, and it was considered potentially a false flag when it was just done by random Islamic extremists. And another event that was a big deal was what was considered Black Friday, which is when the military fired on protesters who failed to realize that they were declaring martial law. Okay, so we had a nationalist puppet that was installed by the deep state, and it did not end well. Because he was eventually overthrown by Ruhollah Khomeini, the Ayatollah. Everybody remembers the Ayatollah. You can still see him being satirized in certain movies, even though he died before I was born of heart failure. Okay. And then after he died, he was succeeded by the current Ayatollah Khamenei, the current supreme leader of Iran, who is a radical Islamic cleric. Okay. And this is where you kind of understand a little, this is where you kind of get to where everything shifts, okay? The CIA and the deep state have repeatedly intervened in the internal affairs of Iran, following by setting up the Shah. They helped form the Iranian secret police. They may have been involved, obviously, in Iran-Contra, which was set up by Reagan. Supposedly disputing terror groups. And at present, you have to understand that Iran pretty much is responsible for funding many of the various Islamic proxy wars throughout the region. And rather than go into great detail about that, it's just generally known that they fund Hezbollah, who has just saying, we're staying the fuck out of this because they know what's going on. And they're pretty much the funder of all the terrorism. But you have to understand the nuclear program. Okay. You have this nationalistic symbol that was originally origins under the Shah. After the Shah was removed from power, it slowed dramatically after the Islamic Revolution. The Shah was deposed, and Iran's new leaders under Ayatollah Khomeini were initially hostile towards nuclear technology, seeing it as a symbol of Western influence. Many nuclear projects were shelved or canceled. The Iran-Iraq war in the 80s derailed the nuclear program even further as resources were diverted to the war effort. And then Iraqis bombed it, and everybody withdrew from the project. And it was in the 80s it was put on hold. Okay. By the early 1990s, Iran's nuclear program had accelerated on two parallel tracks, one overtly civilian and one covert. Openly, Iran continued working with Russia and China to build peaceful nuclear infrastructure. One of the facilities was moved forward under Russian engineers until it finally came online in 2011, and China helped Iran with nuclear research and uranium mining expertise. Less transparently, Iran was building secret enrichment capability and exploring technologies relevant to nuclear weapons away from the eyes of inspectors. Iran's covert procurement of enrichment technology bore fruit in the 1990s. Thousands of centrifuges, components, tools, and technical drawings obtained from Abdul Qadir Khan, who was a Pakistani nuclear physicist, and for the father of their nuclear program, were used to set up a secret pilot-rich workshop. Experiments with uranium hexafluoride gas were conducted. Yeah, but you can put fluoride in the water. Were conducted in undeclared facilities in Tehran. In the late 90s, in 2000, Iran completed a uranium conversion plant at Isfahan based on Chinese designs to produce uranium hexafluoride feedstock for enrichment. It also developed domestic sources of uranium, a mine in the Azad province, and then another mine near the Gulf Coast, which became operational in 2004. In the late 1900s, Iran launched a nuclear weapons research program, codenamed the Amman Project, under the aegis of Iranian Ministry of Defense. Now, and it's just continuously continued on. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. And they were always, considered in opposition to it, put under sanctions, with secret facilities being consistently exposed. A significant development came in September of 2009 when Western leaders exposed yet another secret Iranian facility. Okay, nuclear weapons and everything else are obviously properly regulated, given their extreme danger and everything else, to prevent things like Chernobyl. Iran consistently has refused to follow the rules and has developed into their stockpiles. Okay, and now you're starting to see why, when you move past all the Israeli debate, all of that stuff, when you just remove all that and look at just Iran, you're starting to understand why many of the things that have not been working have not. Because, as I said, Iran is a little more developed. Iran equals the smart yet stubborn gypsy guy. Okay. They behave like, as the expression goes, a gypsy. Okay, now gypsy is basically a slang term for a stereotype for somebody who is, yeah. This is what I was looking for. Okay. Gypsy. Now, while gypsies are technically Okay, this is it. All right, so you got the gypsies, or and that word is associated with the gyp. It's a slang term for gypsies is somebody who cheats and swindles and is a fraudster. Okay, and that's where the expression behave like a gypsy comes from, when that's sometimes conflated as a slur for Romanians and other Indo-Aryan people. It basically, Iran is a gyp. Okay, I'm not being derogatory towards an ethnic group. I'm just saying that they have the personality of a gypsy, of what is somebody who, basically swindles and cheats and travels all over the place and just plays games. Okay. See, because they realized that if they do not do their nuclear program, nobody cares about them. They don't have any bargaining chips to get anything. Okay? So as long as they continue to develop their nuclear program, even if they say they don't want weapons, it's more just threatening to go and develop nuclear weapons. And basically, and this is where when you settle past all of this, you kind of get to the justification for the war there. Okay? Do we want another lengthy and entrenched conflict? Absolutely not. Okay? I already said above, there's only one place on Earth where we need to have that at. In my opinion, that would be Haiti, but I'm not a political scientist or anything. But Iran, basically, they're just gypsies. The whole country behaves as a diplomatic model of a gypsy. And so they're very smart, yet they're also very, very stubborn. Okay? This is just basically a nationalist gypsy country that has been using their nuclear program for years as a way to negotiate either its end or to get stuff or whatever, whilst secretly funding all of these Islamic extreme groups and various proxy wars all over the place in like Nigeria and Hezbollah in the Middle East and everywhere else, in the sponsor of terrorism. And the biggest benefactor of Islamic extremism and Islamic fundamentalism. And say what you want about Israel and say what you want about the Jews, okay, and all of that, they can at least function normally in society and they're not so culturally different. Okay, you're not reading about female genital mutilation in Judaism. That's not a thing. That's not something that has to be dealt with. It doesn't integrate itself so well to a lot of the third world practices. Okay? And so Iran is very smart, yet very stubborn, and they're basically behaving as I've already said. And now we get to present day. Trump got elected, presumably worked out some plan with BB to finally end this, and they went and they go, you have 60 days to put an end to this. Otherwise, we're going to come in and we're going to just shut it down. They were told, you can't have nuclear weapons. You have not earned the right to have nuclear weapons. You have not been able to properly conduct yourself in a capacity that would allow you to pursue that. We're sick of propping this up. This ends, and that's what the current lengthy worldwide entrenched conflict is. Okay? That is all that is. Okay? That's it. That is a rough summary and a gestalt of what is happening there, and that is all that is. Okay? That's all that is. And when you see it in that instance, it's like, yeah, do we want to do this? No. Is it kind of whatever? I mean, yeah, we can go and just be all riled up about Israel, but it's like, this is just some bittersweet thing that needs to just get done. Go pick up the deep state's mess, clean up our mess, and hope that whatever ends up taking over after this is not as big of a bastard as this. So that was that. We're going to take a break. We're going to do I'm not going to be putting the full videos up on Odyssey anymore because we're trying to shorten it. So we're going to have a break, and then for the people just listening to this, and then we're going to have other segments. But the podcast is kind of changing. So thank you. And again, wintersauceproductions.com. Go there and make purchases today.